Okay, so that last scene, the rest of it is very obvious, but this last scene, look how dejected the robot's looking, yeah? Yet he's already planning his next escape, all right, or his next little adventure. And one of the interesting things about robots is that if they do develop social skills, they will, as a side effect, also be able to deceive us. Because one of the cognitive capabilities that are required for communication, right, is that you're able to create or develop models of other people's minds, right? So, for example, and this is learned. It happens between the age of 3 and 6, to all of us, right? So little kids, 2 and 3, cannot lie, right? Because they think everybody knows what they know. So how can you possibly lie? But by the age of 6, they realize that actually mummy doesn't know what I know, and they begin to exploit it. So, if someone doesn't develop that skill, then they tend to be sort of on the autistic spectrum. So we certainly don't want robots that are autistic in any way. They'd be so frustrating to kind of have around. They'd be irritating, etc. So one of the things we have to prepare for is robots not being honest necessarily, or having to tell humans white lies because they just wouldn't understand. I think that this is something that's not really explored in the media yet, but it is very obviously going to be a problem, especially when robots can be physically stronger than us, but also have perceptual abilities beyond us, right? They can see things we can't see, just like a dog can smell things we can't smell. And also they can communicate wirelessly. They can stream vision feed, for example. One robot can send exactly what they're seeing to another robot or to a more powerful computer via the cloud. So these are the kinds of things that I use to engage my students and get them to think in more interesting ways than just the technology and what's going on. Okay. Now, classroom. I do have a robot up here. Okay, it's called a Romo, and all you need is an iPod or an iPhone. Okay, and essentially, an iPhone is a robot. Okay, I don't know if you've realised this, but a mobile phone is more like a robot than it is like a phone. All right, it's got sensors. Some are obvious, like the camera, but it's also got accelerometers. It can measure gravity. All right, and this little contraption just gives it wheels. I don't know if it's going to actually work. I'm not really planning to do a demo as such, but just want to convince you that this is worth exploring. So it's a character, can move around, make sounds, and I think it can respond. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm getting too close. Anyway, you can program this very, very simply. It's sort of a visual programming. And it's using all of the sensors on an iPod or an iPhone, right? And it only costs about $150. So this is really an easy way to get into robotics. And you can see this is the little interface that you have, and you just sort of you just add. I'm going to put him to sleep now. You just add. Now that's a really interesting reaction, okay? Because you just naturally feel like that. It's an empathy response that we have when we think this is alive, and we can't help it. Okay. I'll have to put it in there. Okay. And these are all really unexplored. I mean, I don't know if you've heard about the uncanny valley, but people get creeped out when they see robots that look too human, all right? And it's known as the uncanny valley. So in terms of accepting robots, there are certain things that you can do. And the PR2, the robot that we just watched, trying to get a job, you may have thought, wow, he doesn't really look very interesting as a robot. He's been specifically designed so he doesn't look like a human. That means people will treat him, in fact, he looks more like an insect than a person, and so that means people don't have very high expectations of him. So if he does anything interesting, they're going to be thrilled. And then we don't go into this uncanny valley kind of scenario. Anyway, this robot doesn't suffer from that either. But you can see that if you could easily program this, then you can teach programming literally in 5 minutes. So natural. It's a very intuitive interface. The people who developed this robot gave a TED talk not very long ago. So I really recommend that if you have any interest in robotics or thinking about introducing it into your class, I think this is a very easy way. But it also shows where robots or robotics is up to, and they've been very successful in, sort of in a teaching kind of scenario. But with these sorts of platforms, they're very accessible, and even teachers without a lot of training can easily conduct classes on these kinds of robots. And what's also nice is for those students who then want to delve a bit deeper, there's a software development kit, etc. And there are increasingly more and more apps for this platform, right? So this is a very easy way to get started to teach kids programming skills. It's an agile kind of platform, and it's very data driven, right? You have all the data that a phone or an iPod, and importantly, it's connected. So there's a very strong social side, right? And you can explore the actual programming, you can explore the human-robot interaction. It's enormous sort of potential for a very small amount of money. Okay? All right. So now I want to move to cars, all right? Because a car, remember how I said modern mobile phone is more like a robot than it is a phone. I hope you accept that. And if the car today is like the telephone was in the 1990s. It sort of has single purpose. It sort of gets you from A to B, just like the telephone was to make a phone call, right? And this can do much more than that. So, if you had to design a piece of technology that could destroy the planet fastest, you'd probably come up with a car, all right? It's very sort of non-green, right? And in terms of the user experience, very, very limited. And there's enormous scope for innovation, much like the phone in the 1990s. And it's a great problem because students have rich car experiences. That means that they can develop insight into solutions. I mean, they can identify problems clearly, and then they sort of have enough experience to come up with solutions. All right, which is maybe not true for robots, simply because people haven't had enough experience with them. Also, it has great impact on their lives, the lives of all of us. So car technologies, I think, are a good way to inspire the next generation, right? And engaging them now is very useful because there are going to be big changes in the car industry that are going to roll out. And if you've thought about the possibilities beforehand, you're going to get so much more out of seeing that unfold, right? So cars today, I'm running out of time, but oops, oh no, cars can drive themselves today. I'm missing movie. Oh, who can power slide? This car can, all by itself. Okay, needs more practice. Okay. No one's driving this car. Okay, It's impressive, yeah? I mean, robots can, not robots, but computers can be displaying chess, they can drive better than, there's not a lot left. And this is already several years old. So the next movie is, oh no, sorry. This movie is, just driving down the highway in California. I mean, they've clocked up millions of miles, these cars, right? They're actually safer because they, can detect things. They can also detect when the driver's about to fall asleep. So safety is definitely on their side, but there are a lot of issues around their acceptance, yeah? I don't think I need to go through that because they're all pretty obvious. If the car crashes, if someone is injured, who's to blame. Another really interesting aspect of car technologies are the technologies we can run on our phones when we're in our cars. And a brilliant example of this is Waze. So Waze is a couple of years old by now, but it's a social GPS. You can find out where your friends are if they want to make themselves visible. I use this app to collect my son. So in my job, if I say I'm going to pick him up at 5 o'clock, I could be half an hour early, I could be half an hour late. I don't want him hanging around the school gate. He can see where I am, and if I've stopped to get milk or things like that. Anyway, Waze recently sold to Google for over $2 billion. All right, and anyone in this room and any one of your students could have thought of this app. Right, there's a huge opportunity here. But the bigger opportunities are if we can combine these kinds of ideas with analytics, okay, and the background data that is collected. And there's been a big transformation in robotics to be, you used to design a robot sort of top down. You want the robot to do this, you want the robot to do that. But developing new techniques that could actually make sense of the data itself is a much better option, and that's actually what transformed the ability of cars to drive themselves. They're doing all the data analytics themselves. There's no one, because you couldn't really write a program that could allow for all possible circumstances. So I've taken this idea of invent to learn to a new level. We're crowdsourcing ideas for the future of the car. And you are very welcome to get your students to think about car technologies and to enter them into this competition. The reason I dreamed up this competition was I wanted children of all ages to feel the power of invention, having an idea, and that anyone can have an idea, really. You don't need to be special. You don't need special training, okay? You need an insight, and that comes from your experience and your understanding of the problem. What problem are you trying to solve? This is a really critical question, and one I think that for some reason it doesn't always seem to be the first question that people pose when they're trying to invent something or trying to be innovative. But if you can find a good problem to solve, one that is significant, one that would release a lot of value, okay, that's a good idea. And posing the problem is often the hardest part of invention and being innovative, okay? Because once you've got the problem, you understand it, solutions tend to flow, okay? So anyway, I just wanted to make you aware of this competition. And if you do want to encourage your students, then my suggestion is that you get them to focus on a problem. Do they want to make something better? Do they want to add a new feature, a car with arms, a new service, a remote control car, or a car that drives you to work, you get out, you tell it to go park itself and come back at 3 o'clock and pick you up. If cars can drive themselves, why can't they do that? And is this problem really worth fixing? Is it going to save lives? Is it going to save resources? Is it going to create new opportunity? And what's the market size? I think these are sort of very useful questions, and I think a very useful process for young people to go through, all right? And then what have you got at the end? So what if you needed to design a car that went from anywhere to anywhere? You might come up with something like this. What about if you needed a car that can help clean up the streets? you might come up with something like this. These are two examples. But you know, what if when cars are connected, interesting things sort of happen. And the big question is, okay, well, they're connected, what are they going to say? Wittgenstein, the great philosopher, he said, well, if lions could speak, what would they say? So what is interesting for a car? And one of the things that cars might be able to do is to find parks for each other, help each other find parks. You know, if they're in a social network, you know, parking wastes a lot of time, energy, fuel. It's quite expensive driving around looking for parks. Direct sensing technologies are very limited. If we have sensors all around the city, and then who's going to maintain them all? You know, there could be like millions. And they're not really proactive. They're very passive, right? They don't have that predator kind of sense. And no one knows the roads and parking spaces better than cars themselves. They're driving around the city. They're getting real-time information. And they could work together, okay, to help each other find parks. And then you can think of various business models around this, where, you know, you could actually have a sort of a microeconomy among cars about, you know, I mean, how valuable is a car park? And it is very personal, really, because, you know, if you're in high heel shoes and you don't want to walk very far, you'll probably pay a lot more for a car park close to where you need to go, as opposed to someone who's actually looking for a bit of exercise. So now I shall end, and with some very quick discussion. So my main message is, and I think this rings true with a number of people here, it's not about the technology, it's what the technology can do. Autonomous robots are a disruptive technology, okay? And they're a great way to inspire students and get them to think about disruption. And radical disruption can be found on the social side of robots. And I think there should be a lot more discussion in the community and in your classes about the impact and implication of robots in society. And I think, yeah, robot programming and considering the possibilities of the Internet of Things and how you would actually bring about the Internet of Everything are very, very useful.